Hey there, it's Mrs. Ehlke here. Today I worked on a picture of somebody's house. I have real estate agents that come and talk to me about painting house portraits for people that they are either selling houses for or people who have just bought a house. And so this real estate agent contacted me and said, I have a homeowner who is selling their house and I want to give them a gift that they will remember, which is a watercolor portrait of their house. So they send me a picture and an address and I make a portrait from it. So I just wanted to show you kind of the process that I take when someone gives me a picture of a house. I also do this just for families who want a watercolor painting of their home. And it's just a neat little keepsake that they can have to remember one of the homes that they've lived in, or maybe their first home that they ever got. So the house that I got is this one here. This is the finished painting, and it's a real cute little house located in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I worked on this from actually a photo that I got off of Google Maps. Sometimes the photos that I get are kind of tricky because either there's like a strong shadow or maybe the season isn't right, like there's tons of snow because it's winter. So if I use Google Maps, a lot of the times I can find just from the street view a good photo. And this was one of those cases where I got this from the street view from Google Maps. You can see there's green plants even though today snowed. And so that was kind of nice to be able to use that as a reference. So take a look and see what you think, and yeah, see the whole process as it happens. All right, thanks for watching. So when I work on houses, I usually start in the background, in this case with the sky, and I got it all wet with water first. And now I'm dropping in some color. And the paint will kind of go wherever the water is. So as long as I keep the actual house dry, then there won't get any color on the house until I'm ready for it. I'm going in with the trees right away too. Even though the sky's not dry, then it'll create a softer line between the trees and the sky. I do this more for distant trees so that it's a softer outline. I'm also going into the grass, just getting some color down there too. I tend to use a little bit more blue with my green to make bushes or trees that are farther away. It kind of helps push them back, and then as they get closer, I add a little bit more dark color and a little bit more green. I'm just kind of getting these areas wet and then dropping in some greens. Now that all of the background has been added, at least the first layer of the background, I'm going to start adding some details to the house. And I'm going pretty bold with my colors here. I want to get this red down first just because it's a nice vibrant red color to this house. So I am kind of working section by section. I'm using a round brush, so it's nice for larger areas, but then also has a really nice point for some of the finer details. This brush happens to be a size 6. And while it's still wet, I can drop in whatever other colors or shades I want. So I started off with a bright red, and now I'm adding kind of a hint of brown to the red so that it's a little bit darker and not quite so bright. I especially wanted to darken the areas just under like the roof edge, because those would be in a little more shadow. As long as my area is still a little wet, the paint should kind of blend nicely. If I let it get too dry, then I can create either hard lines, or sometimes it will kind of puddle out, make like backwashes too. So I try to kind of avoid those in this specific situation. So this whole time I'm looking at a reference photo and just trying to kind of paint what I see. I'm going to continue adding details to the house, fill in sections that are colored, especially with the red right away. So you can see I went ahead and added all the red into the house. Now I'm going to jump back into the background, and I'm going to start adding some details to some of the larger trees that were on the right side of this house. They are behind the house, but I do want to give them a little bit more detail, and I'm just going in with a little bit of a more vibrant shade of green mixed with some blues, and I'm kind of dabbing my brush. I have not done any of the branches or the trunk yet. I'm starting with the leaves, and then I can always draw some branches to kind of connect them later. I'm trying to be somewhat random with my leaf placement and just kind of tapping my brush, still grabbing for the same kind of greens and blues. And this tree, actually, this part of the tree comes in front of the house, so this is one that's closer to us than the house. So I'm having it overlap just a little bit. On the front. Next, I'm going to focus on the roof of my house, and this is kind of a grayish tinted roof, so my favorite colors to use for that is a combination of blue and brown. The blue and brown combination can give me some really nice shades of gray without making them too dull, and I want it to have a little bit of life to it, so by mixing the two is usually a good combination for rooftops when I paint homes. And a lot of times I like to kind of leave my brush strokes a little bit uneven, just to kind of indicate the different roof variations, I guess you would say. I'm also going to work on the windows, and usually I fill in the windows with either clear water or a little bit of tinted water, so these are still tinted gray like the roof color, and then while it's wet I drop in some colors to show the reflections. And this home had very dark reflections, so I am getting the windows wet with a lighter color, and then I'm dropping in some kind of darker blue-gray. And I'm trying not to touch it too much once I put the color in there, because I don't want it to blend perfectly, but kind of be more of a spotted area. So some other things I've done, I went ahead and added a little bit more detail to the grass below just to give it some more color, and then obviously I finished up the windows. I added a little bit of shading toward the top ridge, and now I'm going in and doing some of the detail work on the house. So adding some little flowers in the pot, some of the little bricks along the bottom of the flower bed, and then now I'm adding some of the shadows that happen like under the roof line and then over by the door to give it a little bit more detail. I am looking at a reference photo when I did this, the one that I showed right away, so I'm trying to kind of get the idea of the photo, but keep it kind of painterly as well. I'm adding some specific brush marks to the roof to make it look more like the little roof shingles. And then adding just some other little details. I've given the steps some red color, and now I'm going in and darkening so that you can see where each specific step starts and stops. Adding some of the shadows and the shading in there. A lot of this is just about layering, so I'm using the different layers of colors, and I continue to add layers until I get the dark value that I am looking for. I wanted to indicate the paneling on the house, but I didn't want to get over detailed, I guess. So instead of using a ruler and sitting there and measuring each one, I'm just kind of putting some light horizontal lines in with my red. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It gives the indication, but it's not overly detailed, at least. I also wanted to add a little bit more variety and value to the plants up front. So I'm going with the darker green and just kind of adding some darker values, especially towards the bottom edges of the plant, but I still wanted to leave some of the light showing through along the top. It gives it a little bit more dimension, makes it look a little less flat. And then here I'm finally connecting those floating leaves to some trees and some branches and trying to figure out kind of where those fit in the back of the picture. If ever you get a little bit too heavy with the paint, you can just take a Kleenex and blot it like I just did on the tree trunks there. That kind of will lighten it up. I prefer Kleenex to paper towel because it's a little softer and doesn't leave any type of imprint. But paper towel works too. So I'm using a thin point Sharpie now to add some line detailing to my watercolor painting. I find that ink and watercolor really look nice together in certain situations, and a lot of times I like to add ink to my homes just to add that extra definition and detail. So I'm using my ruler to make my lines nice and straight, and I'm going in and adding those nice lines to create the details of the home. Once I've added all of the ink to the home, I'm also going to look at some of the things around the home, for example, the tree branches. And here I'm not trying to sit and outline every little piece, but instead I just kind of make these squiggly marks to give the idea or indication of branches and trees and leaves, and just to add a little bit more variety to what's going on up there. So it's kind of like scribbling almost on top of the leaves, but gives it a little bit of extra texture. I do a similar thing on the plants below. I'm also just kind of making a broken line to show the grass line. And then here I am writing my name. I like to sign my work L. Ehlke, and then I usually put the year. So in this case, 2020. And there you have it. Notice I did not use ink on the far away trees because I want those to be a little bit more subtle. So usually I just do it on ones that are closer. Here I'm removing the tape to give that nice crisp white border. And the tape also helps hold down my picture to prevent like wrinkles or rippling in the paper. And there you have it, masterpiece. Thanks so much for watching, and if ever you want me to paint your house, just let me know on my Facebook page, Lori Ehlke's Art.